Most companies do not run out of customers. They run out of cash while acquiring them. And that distinction matters more than almost anything else in B2B growth. Welcome to the show. I'm Brenda, and with me are Fluman, founder of MATCH B2B, and Dan Mercer, CFO of a global B2B SaaS and services company. Today, we're talking about one number that looks operational, but actually decides whether growth is sustainable or just expensive theater: CAC payback.
Yeah, because a lot of companies celebrate acquisition costs like it's the whole story. Our CAC is fine. Fine compared to what? If the cash comes back in 6 months, that's one company. If it comes back in 18, that's a completely different business model.
Or a financing strategy, which is usually the part nobody says out loud.
That phrase right there, a financing strategy, is the tension in this episode. Because on paper, growth can look healthy. More leads, more demos, more pipeline. But Dan, if the cash leaves now and crawls back much later, the business can still get hurt badly.
Exactly. Pipeline is a story. Cash is the ending. I like growth. I'm not anti-growth. I'm anti-pretending that a long wait for recovery is somehow a minor detail.
And this is where founders get trapped. They see demand, they see activity, maybe even strong close rates, so they assume the machine works. But the real test is simpler. How long until the money returns? If that answer is fuzzy, you are not managing growth. You're hoping the cash gap doesn't punish you first.
So let's make this clean for listeners. CAC payback is not, did marketing work eventually? It's, how long did I finance the acquisition before I got paid back?
Yes, and eventually can kill you.
A lot of teams still defend spend with ROI. They say, we put in $1, we got 3 back. Why isn't that enough?
Because ROI without time is dangerously comforting. If I spend $1 and get $3 back in 30 days, great. If I get it back in 18 months with a long sales cycle, onboarding cost, account management load, and margin pressure, that's not the same return in business reality. Same ratio, different stress on the company.
The 18 months is the piece people forget. Same ROI headline, radically different cash burden.
And usually the CAC itself is incomplete. That's the other problem. People quote media spend or maybe marketing payroll. Fine. But where are SDR salaries, sales commissions, pre-sales support, travel, tools, management time? If you leave those out, you're not measuring CAC. You're measuring the part you'd prefer to discuss.
Exactly. Partial math creates false confidence. I see companies say their CAC is $10,000. Then you load the actual commercial engine, and it's closer to 22. Same funnel, same deals, just honest accounting.
Dan, grab that 22. When a company says 10 and the real number is 22, that's not a rounding issue. That's more than double.
Right. And doubling CAC doesn't just change efficiency, it changes survival. Because payback depends on what cash went out, what gross margin comes back, and when it comes back. If the deal closes after 4 months, invoices over 12 months, and delivery starts eating margin immediately, your real payback is slower than the slide deck suggests.
Let me try to say that back. You're not paid back when the contract is signed. You're paid back when enough gross margin has actually arrived to recover the full acquisition cost.
That's much closer. Signed revenue is not cash recovery, and cash recovery is not booked ARR. Those get blended together all the time.
And if you sell internationally, this gets even messier. Sales cycles stretch, legal stretches, procurement stretches, delivery timing shifts. So the same CAC in 2 markets can produce very different payback curves.
Which is why payback isn't just a KPI on a dashboard. It's the constraint that tells you how much growth your cash position can actually support.
Let's put numbers on it. Say fully loaded CAC is $30,000 per new customer. Same number in both scenarios. In scenario 1, payback is 6 months. In scenario 2, it's 18 months.
The 30,000 is a great anchor. So if I want 10 new customers, I'm spending $300,000 to acquire them.
Correct. Now here's the difference. At 6 months, that 300,000 starts cycling back relatively fast. At 18 months, you're carrying that gap for triple the time. Same 10 customers, same headline growth, totally different cash demand.
And if you want the blunt version, growth with 18-month payback is a financing decision. You're not just buying customers, you're funding the wait.
So Benny can look at those 10 customers and say, "Great, let's push." And Dan looks at the same 10 and says, "Who is paying for the 18 months?"
Yes, walk me through the math. If we add 10 customers this quarter, when does cash come in? What breaks if conversion drops? What happens if revenue shifts by 1 quarter? Those are not pessimistic questions. They are the operating questions.
And to be fair, ambition matters. There are moments when you should lean in. If the market window is open, if positioning is working, if the segment is right, waiting too long also has a cost.
I agree. But then say it honestly. We are choosing to absorb more cash exposure to capture growth. I'm fine with that. What I dislike is pretending exposure is efficiency.
Let's create the fear moment, because this is where listeners feel it. Same $30,000 CAC, same plan for 10 customers. Now conversion drops 20%.
Then your cost per outcome rises immediately. Maybe you don't get 10 customers. Maybe you get 8. So your 300,000 didn't buy what you modeled. Payback stretches. Cash pressure rises. And if, on top of that, deals slip 1 quarter, just 1 quarter, then the recovery moves again while payroll, media, and commissions have already gone out.
That 1 quarter is the part that's easy to underestimate. 90 days doesn't sound fatal in a meeting. It feels very fatal in a cash forecast.
Especially in SMB and mid-market B2B, because they don't have infinite room for error. A 6-month model can absorb friction. An 18-month model with a quarter of delay starts behaving like strain.
And that's before churn. If a customer leaves before payback, you never recover the acquisition cost in the first place. People love talking about logos won. I care whether the logo paid back.
Let's go deeper on that. Dan, if churn hits before payback, or discounting cuts revenue, or delivery margin is thinner than expected, the model gets uglier fast, right?
Fast. If you discount to win the deal, gross margin shrinks. If onboarding is heavier than planned, payback slows. If the customer churns before recovery, CAC was never repaid. And forecasts usually assume cleaner execution than real life provides.
Which is why sensitivity matters. Not one plan, but the downside case. If conversion falls 20%, if sales cycle extends, if implementation cost rises, do we still like the economics? Or did the whole growth thesis depend on perfect conditions?
The phrase perfect conditions is the giveaway, isn't it? Because most board decks don't say, "This only works if nothing slips."
They imply it elegantly.
Fair. So give us the CFO test. 3 rules. Simple, usable, sharp.
First, know your cost per outcome, not activity, outcome. Cost per qualified opportunity, cost per customer, fully loaded. Second, know time to cash, not signed contract, not pipeline. When does enough gross margin actually return? Third, no downside risk. What happens if this performs 20% worse or arrives 1 quarter later? If you can't answer those 3, it's not a decision yet.
And I'll add one operator's lens to that. If payback does not fit your cash cycle, your go-to-market design is wrong for the company you are, even if it's right for the company you want to become.
That's the practical takeaway. Ask one hard question this week. How long does it take for acquisition cash to come back? Really come back. Not in theory, not in booked revenue, not in a polished dashboard. In cash and time.
If you don't know your payback, you're not managing growth, you're financing it.
And that's where we'll leave it. Thanks for listening to Match B2B Insights. Thanks, Benny. Thanks, Dan.
Great conversation.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.